how it turns out, sir, but I'm humbled by it. It is good to be back with all of you, ladies and gentlemen, with the Washington Policy Center. I would tell you that you're admired far and wide. I have seen your data, believe it or not, quoted up in New England when I was up there on a completely different issue a couple years ago. And I was so proud to look up in the midst of a rather boring lunch that I try to stay awake in and see tax data cited from the Washington Policy Center as an argument for what they were trying to do up there. So it was really crazy, and it's good to hear that Ottawa is going to get a lesson from Washington Policy Center as well. But I say that with all seriousness because generally these kind of state policy organizations are known at best in their own state. Many aren't even known there. And for you to be known beyond your own boundaries, that really says something about this outfit's reputation. I'm grateful to join you all in what would probably be the primary city of the eastern side of the state, although there's some others that would resent that, where I'm from. I especially want to welcome those of you who traveled from the west side. As you came over Snoqualmie, that yellow orb up in the sky, that's the sun. We see a lot of that over here. This is heaven on earth, by the way. That's how come Governor Christie came all this far. You see it. You know, I'm proud of being from this part of the state. I couldn't leave it until I was about 21 and the draft was coming. So a little bit of a motivation there. But I did pick up my values here, and what I picked up in this part of the world allowed me to wander the rest of the world, but then come happily home to Eastern Washington. Governor Christie, I just tell you, sir, the last time we saw each other was at the White House Christmas party, and that young lady went home just smiling to Texas with that picture that you took of us. So just like you to just grab the camera, reach in, and make someone feel like they actually were important in a place where she was obviously overawed. But you mentioned that we don't know what's going to happen in 2020. You and I that night didn't know what was going to happen 4 days later, actually, didn't we? But we shared a lot of laughs. That's something you're well known for, sir, because you've carried that joyful attitude into every lion's den that you happily charged into. And we saw it here tonight as you gave us a PhD level lecture on political leadership, and thank you for reminding us that one man, one woman in America can make a difference. One point I would also make is I think the good Lord forgot to do an environmental impact statement on you when they made you a politician. I think they might have said that's probably a pretty risky thing to put him down on the planet Earth for a certain period of time. I can't be up here, ladies and gentlemen, on this dais alongside the man who was CNO, the Chief of Naval Operations, when I was an infantry company commander with 3 different deployments to the Western Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and the Persian Gulf. He is a hero to the sailors and Marines of the fleet. It is sometimes hard, you'll understand this when you get to very high rank in any organization, and certainly in the military with its tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, for one admiral or one general to be really known, to really make a difference way down through all the levels of command. But it was not so for this admiral. We knew who he was. We knew he enlisted in World War II. We knew he had taken over 146 combat missions into North Korea as a pilot. And that's running the odds pretty steep, ladies and gentlemen. 146, you're running the odds awfully steep. He was repeatedly decorated for valor. In Vietnam service, he was the commanding officer of all the aircraft and air crew on board an aircraft carrier, and then he went back as the CEO of the USS America, one of the finest ships in the Navy in its day. And he then moved on to the 7th Fleet, and who we put in command of our numbered fleets, the fighting fleets, those are our warriors. And he also became the Pacific Fleet Commander before he became our Chief of Naval Operations. And he was a warrior first, always a warrior. He's a very fierce one, he knows how to fight. But he's also a very ethical warrior, and he brought the Navy out of the doldrums of a very difficult period. He matched tradition to innovation. He was an inspiration to every one of us. And I think it was humbling to have you say we have a lot in common, Admiral, but I agree with you, it was a privilege every time we got to fight for this country. And it was a pleasure, I might add, to fight as part of the Navy Marine team when you were the Chief of Naval Operations. Ladies and gentlemen, his name alone is his passport to the trust of every sailor and Marine in the fleet. We knew we could count on him. The reason was we knew he cared about us. Then we knew how much he knew. But he cared about every one of us down there, and we knew that. At the same time, he was hard on us. We knew we had to stand and deliver when it was our turn. His devotion to duty at the risk of his life meant he could look us in the eye and expect 100% from us. So I would just tell you, Admiral, you represent what all the veterans in the room represent in terms of the goodness and the commitment to our nation. And I can't thank you enough for your example of moral leadership at a time when our naval service really needed that to come out of some tough times. So thanks you very much, Admiral. We have a sense that what we owe the veterans is the freedom that we enjoy, and certainly that's true. But when you go to high rank also, that's when you really become aware on a personal basis how much we owe our veterans in this country. One night, I'd been ordered to attack a town that had been seized by the enemy, and I was down talking to the assault troops. It was about midnight, talking to them about what they were going to be doing, how we were going to go against this very well dug in enemy. And it's about midnight. It's time for generals to get out of the way and let the young men get ready to do what they have to do. As we were falling back with my half-dozen radio operators, the enemy made a problem behind one of the assault units. It was laying shivering there in the desert waiting for the clock to tick down for them to attack. And so I checked in with the corporal. He said that he'd take care of it, and they did. They calmed things down there, and everything was quiet. And some of the Marines, thinking I'd moved on, one of them asked his boss, the corporal, the 22-year-old, "Corporal, do you think Fallujah's going to be tough in the morning?" And the corporal, because we have ladies here, I won't use quite the same language the corporal used, but he basically said, "Hush and get some sleep. We took Iwo Jima. Fallujah won't be nothing." Now you think about that, these young sailors and Marines laying on the line of departure, ready to assault. And they weren't even alive when Iwo Jima was taken. And yet the example, the raw, unadorned example of our veterans coming down to them gave them the courage to know that nothing they were going to do was going to be tougher than Iwo Jima. So just hang in there, listen to your NCOs, and do the job. So what we owe our veterans, everyone in here, no matter where they serve, is this sense for the young men and women today, they'll never be asked to do something tougher than Shiloh, than Bella Wood, than Vietnam, Admiral. It'll never be tougher than that. And that example is why this great big experiment you and I call America continues to exist. That example that we can win when it's toe-to-toe with the enemy. And the example set for our veterans. So a round of applause for all the veterans. I am, of course, honored to be singled out for the Columbia Award. The name of this award, it's named for a river I swam in every summer. I grew up right on the banks of the Columbia there in Richland. Yet you'll understand as a military man whose reputation is built largely, nearly totally, on the blood, sweat, and tears of others, often very, very young, very junior troops, and on the sacrifices of our never-to-be-forgotten Gold Star families and what they've paid. Humility is the only proper reference point that I can have to get recognized, because I didn't earn this, and that's not false modesty, that's a reality you and I know is true. And I would just point out here that, thank you, but for the veterans, to the NCOs and the petty officers, the junior officers, the senior officers who got me out of every single jam I got them into, I'm grateful to them, and that's why I'm standing up here tonight, and I'm so proud of them, because what I can represent to you is what they did. And that is the honest to God truth. Because it's such a privilege to fight for this country, many of the troops too are able to keep their sense of humor about it. And when they keep their sense of humor, you know they're going to keep their sense of ethics. You know they're going to keep themselves balanced even when they have to do very tough things. I walked up behind a squad fighting in Ramadi one day. It was a terrible time. We were losing troops all over. And I walked up behind this dozen sailors and Marines fighting in the street against an enemy. And I said to them, I asked the single most inane question that's been asked in the illustrious 240-year history of the Marine Corps of a combat leader. I said, hey guys, what's going on? And the corporal, convinced that some village somewhere had lost its duty idiot, dropped his rifle from his shoulder and looked over at me and said, well, General, we're just taking the fun out of fundamentalism over here. The only reason I stuck around that low-paying outfit so long was for the absolute pleasure of serving alongside those rambunctious young patriots there. I would point out the spirit of this evening, Mr. President, the spirit of service to our magnificent experiment that we call America. I have to thank the Washington Policy Center for its very generous donation, a very generous donation to a wounded fund that specifically goes to help some of the most grievously wounded sailors and Marines that we have, who've lost limbs, been blinded, etc. And I just want to thank all of you for that, because I'm reminded, I wasn't in the Marine Corps for 40-some years. I was in the U.S. Marine Corps. We belong to you, accountable to you, and it just shows the ownership you take of us at the Washington Policy Center. We commit that. Dan, thanks so much. I spoke here once before. I think I was the warm-up act for Charles Krauthammer, if I remember right. But I just have to tell you, may he rest in peace, that wonderful guy. But I am grateful, Mr. President, for your team inviting me back. Because, ladies and gentlemen, after some of the things I've said in public, probably not even as colorful as our governor here tonight. But even then, I'm not often invited back to speak in front of polite company, so thank you. Something about coming home where they always have to take you in. But I think also, in a more serious vein, Washington Policy Center does something we need very badly right now in our country. And I think in a time when government can often seem very remote or disconnected, we're a big country now, we're much bigger than when we were founded. In a time when the government can seem to be offering 20th century solutions to 21st century problems. In a time when our political life, it just seems to ignore what unites us often, what unites us as Americans, choosing to focus only on the issues that divide. It's groups like this that can create hard issue policy positions that then can unite people by the logic, by the persuasiveness of the argument for that policy. I think in such a time that this policy center offers a different path forward, one with a rigorous effort to define problems and a willingness to propose new ideas that are both viable but sustainable. Sometimes we have people with great ideas, but they're not sustainable ideas. They're not going to work in the long run. And I think that they have the courage here to bring options to the table consistent with our debt to the next generation, to whom we owe such leadership, to whom we owe those solutions. And we need to be reminded at this point in our national life that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people can actually govern itself in the best interest of the people. Because right now, if we look at the UK with Brexit, problems France has in the streets, look at Germany right now, look at Australia, look at Canada, there's a lot of challenges for the democracies. We need a model that says this can work. We need to be reminded that we can and should be heard from on all issues as well. Too often we leave things to others, and then we get angry about what's going on, and it's all because we didn't get engaged like the Washington Policy Center allows us to engage, because you must organize if you're going to engage in this world. It does not require us, however, to be hard on each other. Be hard on the issues, beat on the table, hammer out the issues, hammer out the policy. But let's remember that the fellow American with whom we may be disagreeing right now today may actually be right about some things, and make sure we keep an open mind and we work together, because the younger generation is counting on us to come up with the best policies. And to you young people, thank you. And to you young people in the room, it's hard. I didn't understand it myself when old people would talk like this. When you get hair my color, you start looking at the young people and say, God, I really want to do something good for these young people. I want to turn this over in good shape. And you're going to hear sometimes nowadays people who mock those who are in government, who go off and run for office, or they're the bureaucrats who try to make things work. And they belittle those who work in government. And I call those people refugees from responsibility. You know what that is? You know, they don't want the responsibility themselves, but they're willing to make fun of those who are in there trying to make the thing work. And it's as if they think that all the freedoms that we have, that we enjoy, they were gained and sustained just out of thin air, that they just happen to happen. That's not the case. This freedom to think as we please, to say what we please, to go where we please, Governor Christie noted that those freedoms came from sacrifice. They came from real sacrifice. You know, like a chicken, you know, gives a donation, you know, an egg, but a pig makes a sacrifice when he gives up a ham. So, you know, here are the sacrifice of generations of patriots who were willing to sacrifice everything for the country. I mean, those people who signed the Declaration, every one of them was going to hang if King George got, if his army won. Every one of them was going to hang. They did pledge their lives for this experiment that we have still today. It sometimes takes a foreigner's view to remind us that America has sources of power unavailable to others. And the two fundamental sources I would cite, one is the power of inspiration, one's the power of intimidation. Now the military exists largely in the latter, the intimidation side. It's also an inspiration, but it's the one that says, if you mess with us, we're going to come after you. It's the one that after 9/11, when some maniacs thought that if they could hurt us, they could scare us, and it was the U.S. military job to show we don't scare, and we went after them right afterwards. We need that power of intimidation if we're going to keep this experiment alive. But at the same time, the power of inspiration, and I have a story about it that I always like to recall. I'm very fond of recalling. We were fighting out in western Euphrates River Valley area. It was 2004, and some of the areas we were outnumbered. Some of you will remember names like Fallujah, Ramadi, Al-Qaim, Haditha. And I was traveling one night, had 29 sailors and Marines with me. They went everywhere with me. And the fighting was so bad that over 4 months, I would see 17 of those 29 killed and wounded around me. And I was a general. I wasn't in the tough fighting. And we pulled in one night, in the middle of the night, out in the western Euphrates River Valley. And when the sun came up, here was a second lieutenant with about 40 sailors and Marines. And their job was to try to block the rat line coming in from Syria, where the foreign fighters were going after Baghdad. And they had to go over hundreds of kilometers of desert to get through, and this was a platoon out there to stop it. And they caught a guy laying a mine the night before on the road I drove in on. Kind of personal. But they were surprised to find that he spoke English, the guy who was laying it. They said, "You want to talk to him?" I said, "Sure, bring him over." So they brought him over, and he wasn't in real good shape. He was shaking pretty bad, and they cut his little plastic handcuffs off, and we sat down on the ground together inside this perimeter in the middle of nowhere. And I said, "What are you doing this for? You're Sunni, we're the Marines, we're the only friends you've got out here. What are you doing this for?" And he started on that ignorant kind of stuff. "Oh, you Jews, you Americans, you're here to steal the oil." I said, "Forget that. You know, you're an educated man. Go away. I don't have time for this sort of thing." And the Marine stepped forward to take him away, and the guard, and he said, "Can I sit here for a minute?" I said, "Sure." So he's sitting there, and got him a cup of coffee. He's shaking so bad he could hardly hold it and stuff. It had been a bad night for him. He's out there with his wheelbarrow, he's got 2 artillery rounds, got a car battery digging a hole. And next thing you know, he looks up and there's 5 guys with automatic weapons standing around him. And they're not his guns. So he knew at that point his retirement plan was in jeopardy. And he finally tells me, I just don't like having foreign soldiers in my country. Well, I can respect that. I wouldn't want that in Spokane. So we talk a little bit. Where's your family? Down on the river. Got a wife, 2 kids, 2 daughters, and everything. Finally, it's about time for him to go. And he says, General, I got a question. He said, am I going to jail? I said, oh yeah, you're lucky you're not dead for that little stunt, but you're going to be wearing an orange jumpsuit down in Abu Ghraib prison for a long time. I want you to listen to what he said next. He said, General, do you think if I'm a model prisoner, someday my family and I could emigrate to America? Now think about that. A guy literally committed to fighting us, to killing us if he could. And the power of inspiration of America can reach clear over to the western Euphrates River Valley. And he would love to be sitting right where you are tonight. His 2 daughters in school in Spokane, Washington. It's a reminder to us on our worst day, ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget just how great it is to be Americans. It's our responsibility to turn over this country to the next generation in as good a shape or better than we found it. Now the actual word for that I first found in Thomas Jefferson's paper. It's called usufruct. And let me tell you, I didn't touch a drop of wine tonight before I said that word. You know why? Okay? But basically, in agricultural terms, and we're in an agricultural part of the country here, it means you can chop down the trees, you can change the water course, plant crops, do whatever you want with the land, but you must turn it over to your daughter or your son in as good a shape or better than you received it. And I have to ask the people with my color hair here tonight, are we turning over this country in as good a shape or better than we received it when we were the luckiest generation because we were raised by the greatest generation in our country? It's a question that keeps you awake sometimes tonight. And I would just ask that we all keep faith in our often chaotic, raucous, and sometimes rambunctious democracy. Keep faith in the Constitution. Remember George Washington's Revolutionary Army marched out of the disaster of Valley Forge, tougher than ever, tougher than petrified woodpecker lips. They came out and they humbled an army, the British Army, that would defeat Napoleon a few years later. So it was nothing certain that we were going to end up with this country. That was based on the sacrifices that Governor Christie related earlier. And I think we have to keep the faith, and let me just close with a few words about that military that is going to keep the faith right now. We have by choice accepted an all-volunteer military. And that's important. That's good. It's been very good for our military to have all volunteers there. But it's also going to need more than just the support of the Congress, which we do have. It's going to need the support of educators and parents. It's going to need the support of businessmen, large and small. It's going to need the support of community leaders and our spiritual leaders as well, because our all-volunteer military is a national treasure. But it isn't just up to the Army sergeant down at the mall to find the recruits, the high-quality recruits. Right now in America, 71% of our 18 to 24-year-olds cannot qualify to be a private in the U.S. Army, the baseline of service. This needs all of our help and all of our attention, because we sit here safe tonight without a care in the world in Spokane, Washington. But we do so because on the other side of the world, where we have troops deployed right now, they're going on patrol, they're keeping the enemy on the back foot, they're helping the French Army do it down in the Lake Sahel, or Lake Chad, Sahel area of Africa. This is all going on, and it all comes down to these high-quality young volunteers. And I would just ask that all of us, in order to keep our military all volunteer, we do our part and make certain that service to communities, service to schools, and service to the nation, service becomes part of our ethos in everything we do. I think every time I'm thanked for my service, and all of us veterans have been, it's a remarkable country today. It makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't know what to say about it, because it was a privilege. I can say thank you for thanking me. That seems mechanical. I can say you're welcome. That seems a little brittle. But I had, like much as an infantry officer, much of what I was trained to do and taught to do was by NCOs. I had a young Marine, Corporal Kyle Carpenter, tell me what's the best thing to say in return. And he is the youngest Medal of Honor winner, or person who earned the Medal of Honor alive today. And the young corporal said, what I tell them now is, you're worth it. You're worth it. And what a great reply. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care whether you're male or female, or you declare you're something else. I don't understand all that. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what religion you are. Believe me, I never doubted your worth every day of those 40 and some odd years that I spent wearing the uniform of the country. I was privileged and humbled to do so. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for honoring me tonight, and I will pass what you have done for me to every troop I ever see until the day I die, saying the country recognizes you via me, and the country's worth it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.